Joey, there are things that are good and there are things that are great.
Totally agree.
And I'm not talking about the prayer that you taught your kids. I am talking about
God is good. God is great.
Yeah. I'm talking about the inner circle, bro.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, this episode today is fire. I think you're going to love the concept and knowledge that will come out of this about what's going on, that you have a limited window of time to take advantage of. By the way, we're recording this. It's May the 6th, 2021. The conversation here applies up to June 25th, 2021. So if you're listening to this episode after that, I'm sorry. You're going to go, dang it, I wish I would have been a part of that earlier. But if you're listening to this in that time frame and you're not a part of our inner circle, you're going to miss out on part of the best thing I've ever heard come out of a tax attorney's mouth.
Well, besides, hey, I saved you a bunch of money. Like that's always a good thing.
Okay, well, see, I'm not trying to be selfish here.
Okay.
Because I don't have money in 401ks and IRAs.
That's true.
So this is the giving back. This is like early Christmas come many times for some people.
No, there's no question. In fact, this is an example of one of those things where you thought something was good and then you found out it was ridiculously good.
What's something?
I'm talking about the inner circle here, like behind the scenes of the conversation you're about to hear.
Okay,
is where the gold lies.
All right. So if you're not a member of the inner circle, you can go back and listen to the recording of this episode. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/inner circle. You join, you can come back to this episode, listen to the Q&A with our tax attorney who shares something that we didn't actually even know as we were recording the live podcast. We give a lot of great details in this podcast, but clearly the Stallion and I are not tax experts, CPAs, or attorneys. So we were very vague to some of the details, but we got into the inner circle. We started asking him questions and he unloaded a major bomb. And yes, that is like a total open the loop cliffhanger. Didn't mean to do it. Didn't know that was what's going to come, but thought this is the way that you should get this information. Go into the inner circle, regardless if you're a member. Join. There's even a 7-day free trial for you to take advantage of this. Stallion, we could spend all day talking about things that are good and great, but I want to get into this episode, so let's belly up.
Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome to the IBC Roundtable, where each week, not only do we have a lot of fun, but we talk about your favorite subject, the infinite banking concept. I'm one of your hosts, Russ, the Idea Guy Morgan, sitting with the best coaches in the industry. To my right, the man with the pink shirt today, the Italian Stallion. He's got the license plate cover to prove it. What's up, Joey?
Hey, happy to be here.
You get some new shoes today, some new golf cleats, I see.
Man, I just had to pull the trigger. Ernie and I went to hit some balls today. The last pair of Air Jordan golf shoes
in the world
happened to be in my size. In the world, yes. No, at least at Highland Park Golf.
Is that going to allow you to get that Phil Mickelson air whenever you make that 2-foot putt? You can be able to jump up like
half an inch.
Yeah,
possibly. But here's the thing. You just take signs, okay? When it's the last pair, it's in your size, and the guy said, hey, I'll just give it to you at cost. You know I love a deal.
You can't turn down a deal.
Come on.
FOMO, this guy.
That's right.
Big time. All right. To your right, it sounds like the guy who got you involved in this adventure. Speaking of adventures, the man that I like to refer to as the Indiana Jones of finance, downtown Ernie Brown. Good afternoon.
Hey, Russ. You point out Joey's pink shirt. You got something going on today yourself.
I do. I got a little floral arrangement, man.
You have literal hundreds of flowers on your shirt.
It's springtime. Are you ready to talk about not a medication, but something that sounds a lot like it today?
Yes, I am, and I can't wait to uncover the side effects.
Exactly. I know there is always side effects to everything. But let's get to our last coach of the day, the man who we affectionately love to call Mr. Incredible with a $1 million smile, JD Hill. What's up, JD?
Hello. Hello. I am almost matching your shirt, Russ, except mine has polka dots, not a floral arrangement like you.
Well, hey, at least you tried, right?
I did try, actually. And we didn't even plan this out. We just woke up excellent and decided let's be excellent together.
Secure in your manhood.
Exactly. Yeah. Today's topic, Covitra.
All right, you're gonna have to break that down.
Well, I don't know if I can, but I will try. We're talking about the COVID Tax Relief Act, as I understand. What is it that you guys know about the COVID Tax Relief Act that's going to help the person listening today?
JD.
Well, I know if you experience, any of these side effects, you should call a doctor immediately. Covitra, that's great. And I think it is such an amazing opportunity. Believe it or not, it's like the first time that I agree with something that the government is doing, and it's giving people such an amazing opportunity to be able to get access to money that would ordinarily remain in prison until you retire. And so I think this is such an amazing opportunity.
All right.
I'm with you, JD. I hear and smell and taste opportunity. When the government says, hey, by the way, you can get access to the money that we had a combo lock on, and we're going to give it to you now with no 10% penalty. Yes, may I have another?
What does opportunity smell like, Stallion?
It's fantastic.
It smells fantastic.
Yes.
Okay. I've not smelled fantastic before.
I'll let you know when I smell it.
I thought you did. I thought you said this smelled like it was fantastic.
I have nothing to say.
That's a first. All right, Ern, to you.
Well, when I agree that this sounds like an opportunity, but I'll be the skeptic. This sounds to me like an opportunity for the government to get some immediate tax revenue. Oof. And I'm just thinking maybe they needed that based on all this spending that they've been doing. They're looking for some money to pay for this. That's my suspicion. That's what I think. But this definitely could be an opportunity for them. Could be an opportunity for us if we play our cards right.
All right. Well, first, everybody's like, Covitra. What is that? And there's a lot to this COVID Disaster Relief Act, right? The Tax Relief Act that we're referring to it. And we are by far not experts. So please consult your local CPA and physician after taking this medication. But as the part I think we're referring to is what, as best as we understand, we're going to have a CPA tax attorney join us in the inner circle right at the end of this podcast. So if you're not listening to this live, you can go inside the inner circle and watch the recording of those who get to ask questions of the CPA tax attorney to try to better understand it. But as I understand it, this is really another opportunity for people who have had their money locked up in the tax prison that are IRAs and 401ks, who would love to free them, who would love to liberate those dollars and get them out working for them instead of Willie Wall Street.
Yes.
And the CARES Act allowed people to access up to $100,000 without having to pay an early withdrawal penalty, right? Because we all know that IRAs and 401ks are designed as a retirement plan for you and Wall Street. They keep your money until you're 60, and they keep keeping it because they make it really difficult for you to get it back. But this CARES Act provision that was instituted last year allowed people to access up to $100,000 without that early withdrawal penalty.
But with having an economic hardship.
Okay.
Based on an economic hardship.
Which pretty much everybody experienced, not everyone, but most people's manufacturing jobs, sales jobs, cities that they were working in, people that they were selling to had impact. So pretty much everyone had this economic hardship. Well, as we understand it, this COVID Tax Relief Act is basically an extension to that, is offering the same things, but with a few tweaks. And instead of it being economic hardship, the clause is now, Ernie,
Qualifying economic disaster.
a qualified economic disaster. Now, I think our country qualifies as an economic disaster, and
It's a dumpster fire, yeah.
at least the way it's being run. But that's neither here nor there. So that's why we'll go to the CPA and tax attorney in a little bit to get more clarity exactly what that means. But I do think if that's the case, we do have a window of opportunity. That window has been open, and as we best understand it, is going to be closing some point June, July of 2021. So it's how quickly can you get those dollars out the window before it closes in front of you?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a timely thing. Once we kind of got our hands around it, we needed to get this word out to you guys as soon as possible
All right.
for
Well,
that purpose.
so JD, what's your take on this?
And my take is, again, if, I was at one point in my life unknowingly and unknowingly and willingly participating in one of these plans. And I did not have the luxury of being able to exercise a provision like this in the tax code. So when I canceled and closed out my 401k, my IRAs, I had to pay the penalties and pay the taxes. And so the best that we know it is this is going to be identical to the CARES Act provision from last year, which will allow you to get up to $100,000 from your qualified plan without paying that 10% penalty, and then be able to spread out the taxes over 3 years.
Well, so in the last year, have you had anybody that you've talked to that took advantage of what happened last year? And if so, I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah, absolutely. There were, I had dozens of folks last year, once we found out about the CARES Act from the Trump administration of being able to do this. And with the language as loose as it was, right, without any real definitive guidelines on it, it made it, pretty subjective on what qualified. And I remember one particular individual that I worked with, this gal out of California. Ironically, she actually worked for the government, and she took out the full amount that she could get from her qualified plan, avoided the penalties. And I love it because what she did is the first thing she did, she took a portion of that and she invested it into herself. So she bought a program to teach her how to do real estate, particularly with creative finance. And so after doing that, within a month or so later, she actually got her first deal where she was able to creatively work with a seller of a property to start generating cash flow. And what's interesting about that is, if you think to, obviously what we're working with people to teach them on how to do is how to stop trading time for money. She was able to take these dollars that would have ordinarily have had to have sit there for the next 30 or 40 years before she could ever use them. And she was able to use those dollars today to immediately start creating passive income in her life today to put her on that path of achieving financial freedom.
Mm.
What does that feel like? Going from basically having an asset that was essentially dead, it's just sitting over there doing nothing, to now seeing that cash flow coming in every month. Like, did she share any details with you about, just that progress?
Yeah, she was really excited. We stayed in touch for, a couple of different conversations, following that, just because I wanted to keep up to date on how those things were going and make sure that she had a game plan on, getting her loans and stuff repaid and back into her policy. But her gratitude, right, was, through the roof. She was extremely thankful, one, that we were able to set up her policy, but more importantly, that we were able to use dollars that she'd ordinarily been saving that had just been sitting there and actually put it towards something that's going to immediately impact her life today, which I think is what we all want, right? We want to be able to do something today to immediately start making progress rather than something that's just based on hope.
That's awesome. Ern, what about you?
Yeah, well, that's an awesome story. It made me think of one that's pretty similar. This guy who has been with us for several years, and his business partner who's been practicing infinite banking for a few years. So they own a business together. They're investing in real estate. They were, when we connected, trying to execute some cash out refinances on some of those properties because they wanted to expand in what they were buying. CARES Act rolled around and they realized that they've made a transition in their thought process of what they were thinking for retirement, and both of them actually really disliking their day jobs, wanting to get out of those pretty quick. So they were excited when this opportunity came for them to get access to dollars that they would have had no access to for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 more years. And so we connected on that, and they were able to both exercise that provision and get access to $100,000 each. They both knew that if they could get access to that money, that could go into some real estate projects that they were looking at. The interesting part of that is each of them needed that money to go through insurance policies, and one of them did it one way, the other did it another way. So they both were pursuing the same thing, and they just went about it doing two different ways to do it, which I thought it was pretty cool to work on that. I enjoyed that. And I need to follow up with them because I know those refinances were taking a long time to see where they wound up. They were able to get that qualified money out more quickly. But I know that that's going to speed up their we're leaving our jobs date exponentially.
When I think, Russ, I think back to just some of the most recent interviews that you and I have been having with some of our clients, just doing some success stories. And one in particular, I'm not going to let that cat out of the bag because it hasn't come live yet. So I'm kind of giving you behind the scenes here. But he was able to leverage the CARES Act to get his first short-term rental. And the difference between before COVID to where he's at today is a dramatic overhaul from the point of saying, I really didn't have a plan. I was kind of living paycheck to paycheck, not really, you didn't really have any sort of sights on a goal, to I could potentially be financially free in the next 5 years if I continue this. Like, that is game changer. I mean, whenever you start seeing things like that, it gets me really fired up to know that people have more certainty, they have more of a plan, more ways to say, I don't have to go to this job, even though I love it, I don't have to. And that is what really gets me fired up about stuff like this topic we're talking about today.
Okay, I've heard enough about infinite banking. I'm pretty sure it's a fit for me and my family, Russ. How do I get started?
Let's take that pretty sure and make it darn sure. The reason you do that is that you get clarity, Joe. You need to get on a 15-minute call with one of our coaches at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/free call.
Then you'll know where you're starting from and where you're headed, and only then can you implement the infinite banking process.
All right, so go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/free call to get that 15-minute conversation, gain clarity. But now let's jump back into today's episode.
Well, and how amazing is it too to piggyback on that when you have a situation or a circumstance like COVID, right? That just radically changed the dynamic in the face of our country overnight almost, and people are able to, because of the things that we're helping them with and the coaching, they're able to take something that could have been a negative and turn it into a massive opportunity, and actually come out of this further ahead than they were before they started. Right? Like, to me, that is so rewarding and encouraging to know that you can utilize these dollars that you've been saving and being a good steward of, and use them in a way to actually propel you forward and get you closer to where you actually want to be, which is not trading your time for money for the next 30 or 40 years, but to start making immediate impact in your life right now.
Well, that's exactly, I think, the genesis behind it all, right? Whether or not we believe or know that the market will or will not perform is irrelevant, right? This is not a comparison of rates of return. This is about access to money and meeting what our goal for our life is. If you want access to money, just like you said, you want to be financially free today, and you're not 58 and a half, then waiting until you are 59 and a half is not in line with your future goals. So most of the people who see this as an opportunity to get out of that, to get their money on track, we all got into stuff in the past that we wish we wouldn't have, right? I mean, Joey, I won't even make you list all the things that you did wrong in your life. We have that. Past is in the past. We're moving forward. right? And so now it's like, okay, now I realize my goal is to create more passive income than I have monthly expenses. So that means I got to get assets creating cash flow. Well, if a large portion of my assets are in something I can't touch for 30 years, that doesn't help me. Wait a second. Window of opportunity. If this COVID Disaster Relief Act actually applies to me, if I can meet the criteria, I can get access to up to $100,000 without the penalty. Now, here's a really interesting part. I just want to bring this up. There is an early withdrawal penalty if you don't meet it, or if you take it out in normal years. Does anybody ever talk about what the later withdrawal penalty is?
I think I know where you're headed.
Well, share, because I think that's the part where the 10% early withdrawal penalty applies. The tax applies no matter what, right? So we know we're going to pay federal income tax on this money. The only thing we don't know is at what rate.
Exactly.
So what would be the later withdrawal penalty, Joey?
I'm going to go philosophical on you.
No, go philosophical on me. Yeah.
Okay.
No, do whatever you want to do, and I'll come back and correct you.
I'm
Sure.
You said we're not comparing rates of return. I'm going to say your absolute cost, your late withdrawal penalty, if you will, is the rate at which you obtained freedom.
Okay.
The rate at which you obtain freedom is the cost, because there are people, and I'm just going to go ahead and say, people that are somewhat close to me, they waited until they're in their 60s to retire. And now within 15 years, having called with them recently, health is completely failed. They're in a walker. There's all these things that are going wrong with them. And they literally gave up 40, 50 years of working time of not having that freedom for what?
Well, what you're saying is a lot of people like to talk about ROR as rate of return. You're talking about rate or return on result, right? What is the result of what you're doing?
That's right.
My comeback to that, I like you went different than where I was thinking. That was good. That was a brain fart for me. My part is, what is the later withdrawal penalty? The later withdrawal penalty comes as if your tax rate today at the rate at which you would access those dollars is 25%, 28%, 33%, 35%, whatever that number is. If when you take out the money, it is higher, that is the later withdrawal penalty. Now, so then we have to try to determine, will that later withdrawal penalty be greater than the early withdrawal penalty? We know what 10% is. That's a given today. Do we know what the later withdrawal penalty will be?
Not a chance.
We don't. So I would just help people think through, do we think, the question that to answer for yourself would be, will the government need more or less money in the future? What's your best guess at that?
Always more.
I would think more, right? I mean, somebody's got to pay for what's happening. And I think there's a point line within that, but you guys were sharing stories. I want to share stories, and I'm just going to share stories that was posted right inside the community, which I love.
We're not going to leave you out, Russ. Go ahead.
Thank you. And there's so many, but I was reading through them. One said, I took out money from the CARES Act last year, accessed $100,000, and I invested in an ATM machine. An ATM machine produces almost $25,000 a year of cash flow for the next 7 years. I thought, man, how cool is that? Another person said, man, I took out money out of the 401ks and I used it to fund my life insurance premiums. Because what we know is the biggest obstacle standing in someone's way to being financially free, Joey, is what?
Access to cash.
So now that they've basically taken money out of a place that they couldn't access it, put it in a place that they will, my assumption is they're going to find an opportunity for that cash soon since they have access to it. And that should lead them to financial freedom.
No doubt.
I heard another person say, yeah, not only did I take it out, I started a life insurance policy, but then I used that to start my short-term rental business. And now that pathway is creating cash flow on my way to financial freedom. There's story upon story just like that of people who've accessed this money. Now, again, we're not telling you that you should take this money out, but we are definitely asking the question of why should you keep it in? Like, give me a compelling reason. as to why I would allow my money to stay locked up for the next 10, 20, 30 years if my goal is to be financially free tomorrow, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, any amount of time less than what it would take me to get to 59 and a half.
Can I also, to that point, like the other element of this too, is let's say I do get $100,000 today. The benefit of that is that I get full use and control and access to that capital today, but I'm not having to pay 100% tax on all of that capital today. Right? I'm
All right,
able to.
yeah. What do you? Obviously, you're referencing something. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So if I make say $100,000 a year, and I were to take out $100,000 from a qualified plan, I would have to pay 100% ordinary income tax on $100,000, on an additional $100,000, because my income would move from $100,000 up to $200,000. And so depending on where your tax bracket falls, you could be bumped entirely into a brand new tax bracket and go from say 25% to 28% or to 30% and so on and so forth. But if I'm able to have full use and control of the dollars today, but I'm only responsible for 1/3 of that tax today, that's a massive benefit. Meaning it may not materially actually change my tax my tax bracket, because I'm only paying taxes on an additional 33 1/3, and the next year an additional 33 1/3, and the following year an additional 33 1/3. But to be able to use all of those dollars today to start creating immediate impact, in my mind, I think that is so powerful to be able to defer that tax over the next 3 years instead of being fully responsible for it today.
Dude, JD, you and I think, are on the same path here, because you and I both took both of those things right on the chin, right? The full 10% penalty and the full tax in the year that you pulled it out. I felt that effect. It wasn't fun, but I'll tell you what's on the other side of it is a lot of fun. Having access, looking for opportunities finding you. Be honest, I wouldn't be sitting here today if I had not taken the step of totally getting out of Wall Street and the whole tax qualified plan game to take control myself.
Well, you guys have done that, and I appreciate you guys speaking from experience. Mark, who's not with us today, he's talked about how he's done that, how he accessed money in his 401k and was able to use that to help him get closer to financial freedom. I just really love thinking about this from a philosophical standpoint, because really qualified plans were created with one goal in mind. What was it?
Revenue.
But most people don't think that way. If you ask someone, hey, why were 401ks created? The mindset would be, oh, well, they were created to help me save taxes.
Or they help me create a place to save for retirement.
Exactly. Except that they were literally born out of the Tax Revenue Act of 1978. The Tax Revenue Act of 1978 is what gave birth to the 401k. Now, who do you think the Revenue Act was for?
Not revenue for you.
No, it's for the government, not for the taxpayer, right?
Well,
it was the taxpayer's revenue. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
And even the guy that I guess essentially authored, if you will, the 401k, I think his name's Ted Benna. He's been on numerous podcasts and has written multiple articles stating his intention for this was never to be what it's morphed into today. Like True. It was never meant to be the sole retirement plan for Americans. It was never meant to replace the pension. And I just if you fundamentally understand the why behind the what, it really helps to put things into so much more perspective, where you have so much more clarity as to why things are done the way that they are.
Well, I mean, Nelson Nash would always kind of give this analogy. If the government truly wanted to give you a tax break, what you think that the IRA 401k is giving you, why wouldn't they just do away with the tax? Do you believe they truly want to do that? No. So when we were talking with a CPA yesterday, just talking about this topic, getting a little more insight from them. And he said, well, look, guys, tax rules are constantly changing. We saw under the Trump administration, one of the largest tax reforms that we had seen in 20, 30 years now we're getting to see one of the largest tax hikes that we've seen
in all of history.
Right. So he's like, I mean, these rules are constantly changing. I found it really interesting during our conversation that we uncovered a couple of new things that is actually being floated out there about what's going to happen with taxes. You want to share some of those things, Stallion?
I don't recall the specifics. I'm never good at that, but I can tell you this.
That's because he doesn't listen, Ern.
I'm sorry. What were you saying? But the issue that I think you've mentioned here, and I think we can take this more in depth in the actual inner circle here in just a second. So if you're not a part of the inner circle, you need to be. This is where you're going to see this thing live, hear us live, and then be a part of an ongoing conversation after the fact. This is the place to be. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/inner circle. But the key that I'm trying to make here is, do you want your access to cash to be dictated by who is in charge? Who got elected the last time? Who gets elected the next time? These are not things, these are not variables that I have ever wanted someone else to be in charge of.
Well, what I was referencing a second ago before you so inadequately forgot what the point was.
Inconveniently, maybe.
Inconveniently?
Yeah.
Inadequately?
He's adequate.
He's
from
he's an
Alabama.
adequate listener.
He's adequate.
He's adequate. I don't know about that. That's giving him way too much credit, Ern. But the CPA said, hey, did you know that what's being floated out there right now is that we're going to have our tax deductions, right? The itemized deductions that we can have be limited up to a certain percentage. And we know that we have marginal tax rates, right? And they start at 10%, 15%, up. Well, there's already being floated out there. Hey, look, it's not fair that you get to write off your itemized deductions, at least some of them at 35, 37, 39%. We're going to limit you to 28%. The same thing's being floated out there about how much you can deduct going into the 401k or IRA if you choose to go that route. Hey, look, it's not fair that the person who only makes $20,000 a year, they only get a 10% deduction when they contribute into their 401k, but yet you get a 40% deduction on yours because it's coming off the top and you're in that 40% bracket. So they're floating out there right now to limit what that deduction would be. But yet, if they limit what the deduction is going to be, Joe, do you think they're going to limit what the taxes they're going to charge you on the back end?
Not a chance.
So they're going to say, well, we're going to limit you to only being able to deduct 20%, but they absolutely will gladly charge you 40, 50, 60, 70%, whatever they want to on the back end.
All day.
And I think that's the part we have to see behind any of this, is that those who make the rules will control the gold and will be able to change the rules as they play. See Big Daddy. All right, let's jump into the inner circle and have a Q&A with our tax attorney. And I hope that you'll join us, whether that's live, recorded, and as always, have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.